Bob, did you kill Susan Berman?
No,
Do you know who did?
no, I do not.
Do you realize you have an absolute right not to testify?
I am aware of that.
Do you want to testify in your own behalf?
Yes.
What was he looking at? What was the turn? Do you want? I don't understand that. And that's part of the demeanor. That's part of who he is. Now, obviously, things are different inside that courtroom. You know, he's got the shield on. He's extremely old, but he seemed to understand everything that was going on there. The question is the jury going to believe him? Can one man convince two juries in two different states, in two different cases, that he is not a murderer? Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining us in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, criminal defense attorney, civil rights attorney, Kesia Early in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Michael Bixson, and also in Atlanta, Georgia, Judge Gino Brogdon. Great to have everyone here tonight. Kesia, is this would be historic on many different levels. It already is. But if this jury also believed his story was reasonable enough to raise a reasonable doubt, unprecedented.
Let me tell you, his body was weak, he was frail, but his mind was absolutely coherent. He was there, he was spot on. He even knew details. I'm talking about specific dates, what someone was wearing during direct examination. Robert Durst is all there. But what I thought was very interesting, the jury was spot on, dead on, focused on Robert Durst. I believe he had him right in the palm of his hands. They weren't taking any notes. They were listening to him. He may pull it off again.
Michael Bixson, the challenge here in looking at his demeanor is who the guy is, right? And how old he is and all the other issues he's dealing with. But what are your thoughts tonight about him convincing a second jury to give them a reasonable explanation for what happened here?
I mean, it's definitely possible. Don't get me wrong. I think that, he certainly hit a home run the first time around, and I don't know whether or not he's going to be able to do it again the second time. My concern is his demeanor and the way that he appears. I mean, and maybe it's just me, but he seems creepy and terrifying up there. I mean, I'm watching him talk and it looks like something out of a horror movie, but it's not something. If that was my client, I would be very concerned with how the jurors are going to perceive him, not just, the things that he says, but how he says them and the way that his body moves and the way that he looks at you. I mean, that's not a warm and endearing look. And that's his lawyer. I mean, that's a little scary.
Judge Gino Brogdon, one of the issues for jurors a lot of time is, do they like the lawyers? Do they like the defendant? I think Michael's right on here. I don't know how they can connect with him, but is that necessary for him to create that kind of connection with one or more of these jurors to believe him, or at least believe his story is reasonable?
They don't have to like him to believe him. Robert Durst is in a peculiar place because it's the kind of crime that if he doesn't say, I didn't do it, then they're going to wonder why. There aren't any witnesses. And it's one of those things, those one-on-one crimes, the defense lawyer is in quite a position. Do I put my client up there so he can look those jurors in the eye and say, I didn't do this, but then risk cross? A prosecutor like you, Vinny, will make cross like the difference between being in a plane and jumping out of a plane. Direct examination is being in that plane, and it's hypothetical, skydiving. But I'm telling you, when you jump out of that plane and you are on cross, you may hit the ground if this goes wrong. We're going to see whether this was a good decision or not on cross. Now, he's creepy. He's a peculiar dude. The jury is not going to be surprised by that. But this is a bold move for him to get on the stand, look them in the eye and say, I didn't do it. It could prove to be the right move. And keep in mind, you mentioned, Vinny, that he's very old and frail. There's a lot of sympathy that could go toward Mr. Durst, even though he's a bit creepy. So this isn't necessarily a bad move yet.
Okay, let's dive into a little bit of the story of how he met Susan Berman. I mean, they were supposed to be great friends going back to when they met at UCLA. Let's take a listen.
Okay, go ahead. How did you meet Susan Berman?
So one night, what we did all summer long was to hang out at the Dykstra Pool, just west of UCLA's main campus, south of Sunset. I guess everybody knows that. There are a bunch of dormitories and a big recreation center. The first dorm that was built was called Dykstra, D-Y-K-S-T-R-A. And we spent the summer by the pool trying to pick up girls. One night I got back to the fraternity house around 9 or 10, and Stuart Altman introduced me to the girl that he had picked up that afternoon. Her name was Susan Berman. I readily found out that both her parents were dead and that her father had owned hotels in Las Vegas and had something to do with the mob.
I don't know, is it just me, but I feel like I'm watching an episode of The Family Guy when I hear that voice. But that's only when I close my eyes. Then I look at him and I can see who he is. What do you think about the relationship here, Casey? I mean, they go way back. They were great friends. But he was kind of dirtying her up a little bit, right? Talking about how she comes from mob money.
Yeah, he sure did. But at the same time, he also kind of showed that affection that he had towards her, especially when they first met. He said when he first laid eyes on her, he thought that she was cute or pretty. So although he quote dirtied her up, at the same time he tried to show that I'm the nice guy. I liked her. I had my own money. She had her own money. So he tried to play that story that there's no reason why I did anything to her. So again, it came off believable to me. And also, you have to understand the jury, the makeup of the jury. Some of the young ones on the jury, this is their first time seeing Mr. Durst. So they're not seeing him 20 years ago. So in their minds, they can't fathom why this old, frail guy would have any type of possibility of harming Susan Berman, because what they're seeing is what they get, and not 20 years ago when he was able-bodied and able to pull this off.
Michael Bixon, this has been a long, long trial, right? I mean, exceedingly long. Does everything else that happened kind of take a back seat now? All the evidence that prosecutors put on about all the different alleged killings that he is responsible for, or murders, however you want to term them, does it just come down to, for the most part for this jury, to sit down, listen to this guy and say, do I buy it? Do I not buy it?
I think all of it does play a very important part in it. I mean, this is part of the whole story that prosecution has been able to tell, and they're trying to tell about not just this incident, but everything in his past and how it all sort of comes together to form a story. And I think that what he's at least testifying to on the stand, what we've heard so far, is certainly trying to explain some of that away. I don't necessarily know how successful he's going to be in that, but at the same time, I do understand where the prosecutors are coming from, and I do think it's going to play a very important role going forward.
All right, we're going to talk more about this. It's our 13th juror question tonight. Your reaction coming up in just a moment. But when we return, another big, big trial that we've been tracking for a couple of years now here at Court TV. We're talking about the trial of R&B superstar R. Kelly. Today was day one. We've got a live report from Brooklyn, USA, coming up next.